Greetings in the name of His Imperial Majesty Jah Rastafari, King Selassie I, the First Emperor of Ethiopia, Jah and King. I'm Emmanuel the Nyabinghi, and I'd like to speak with you today about politics and why Nyabinghi, like myself, don't partake in politics, albeit I've studied it and I understand it. I don't partake in it. Now, I'm quite sure that many people think that I and Nyabinghi don't partake in politics simply because we're rebels and we have no other reason to not deal with politics other than that. But personally, for me, it's something I've reasoned, and I know say that it's pointless, man like me, dealing in politics. In fact, personally, I think it's pointless for any black people living in a white country to deal with politics also, especially those who consider themselves British black because they were born in the country. I'm British black. I was born in this country. Anyway, so from my point of view, I look at things. I'm an Isa Shah, August tribe. And one of our faculties is that we simplify everything so that it's more easily understood. So for me, any party dealing with politics, and me voting for any party dealing with politics, as I said, is a waste of time. Because any party elected in a white country, regardless of whether it's Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem, Screaming Lord Such, Monster Raving Loony Party, doesn't matter. They're going to represent the majority that elected them to power. In this country, the majority is white English. It might not feel or look that way if you live in Brixton, as I did for 25 years, or come from London, as I do, and have spent all my life there. Or if you live in Atlanta, Georgia, or whatever, you might get the impression that there are more black people, but there aren't. Black people are a minority in every white diaspora that they live in, and that's a fact. So, any party coming into power is going to represent the majority, their majority, which is, in this country, is the white English majority. No party will represent us as black people. Whether there are black people in the party or not is irrelevant. Politicians themselves are totally unscrupulous. They literally play with our lives. And when I say our lives, I mean black lives. People say Black Lives Matter, but they're saying that because they know in reality black lives don't matter. So, just to illustrate that point, for instance, when the age of austerity came in via Cameron and then later on May, the Tories themselves cut the number of feds, police, by 20,000. The police were up in uproar, saying that they can't provide an adequate service with 20,000 less men and women. So, nevertheless, the cuts were made. Now, cuts don't affect parties or politicians, for they all live in safe areas, safe streets. Their children go to good schools where there's little or no crime. The only time that was challenged of late was when Jo Cox was killed. She was killed by another white person, and the feds couldn't legislate for that. That's just an anomaly. It's a one-off situation that happened. Notwithstanding, not even 3 years after she died, they're now going to bring back the 20,000 feds that they cut in the first place. Now, where the playing with lives comes into it, our lives, black lives, is that in between the time that the cuts were made and the time when these 20,000 new feds will actually hit road, the amount of our children that have died through violent crime, which they knew would skyrocket, knife crime, gun crime, gang crime, you name it. It's our children that have died and suffered in the meantime. Proportionately, a tiny amount of non-black people would have been affected by this spike in crime. So in other words, they set the policy, the mandate, to say 20,000 less feds, knowing that violent crime would spike and that it would be our people who would suffer the most. And so it is. So all these children, our children, that have died as a result of lawlessness on the streets, which is what happens when you take feds off the street. Then other people claim the streets, gangs claim the streets, and there you have the kind of road behaviour that is now commonplace. So as I say, years later, when one of their own is affected and crime has hit new records that even the President of America mocks London's knife crime and its mayor and its inadequacy in dealing with it, then they reverse the policy to say, okay, the 20,000 feds we took away, we're going to bring them all back. These are just political diktats that they agree amongst each other and then implement. But what it means to us, as I said, in the time between the two decisions, is the death of our young people, the death of young black people. So, coming back to my point in the beginning, whoever represents a white country will be representing the majority in that white country, and the majority will always be the white people. So for me, end of the day, no politics, bun political parties, bun politicians, and bun politics. I'm going to give thanks now unto the Most High Jah, Rastafari.